Jules, as I foreshadowed, and I always love this, whenever a manager leaves a club, right, it's mutual consent, but it's not really, right?
Yeah.
You know, we know the reality here, right? Both sides start spinning.
Yeah.
And what I've seen in our industry, many of our former colleagues, maybe they get paid more in PR, I don't know, right? They get hired not just by clubs, they get hired by agents, they get hired by coaches, and they say, this is what happened. This is why when you pick up the we wouldn't pick up the papers anymore, but when you scroll to your favorite website, you will see all the same stories and all the same anecdotes, and it's going to be Pochettino didn't think Enzo was right as a 6 or as an 8.
Yeah.
Caicedo, he's not physical enough. I don't want to sell Conor Gallagher. All these same stories are everywhere, and equally from the on the flip side. And I think this actually makes you a little bit uncomfortable. With your medical background, you can tell me if this is fair or not. This idea that Jesus Perez, who's the guy with the little JP, who's always by his side, he's kind of like the he's kind of like Pochettino's Jason Tyndall.
Yeah,
right?
He's his first assistant.
He works them too hard in training, so they always get hurt, which I think is kind of like really, really hokey. Surely it's more complicated than that.
Far more complicated.
What do you make of the versions, the conventional wisdom that's out there? That Pochettino wanted signings, he didn't like some of the players who were there, and so on. Yeah?
And we know that. We knew that before. He said that in January he wanted a number 9, he wanted this, he wanted that, knowing too well that it was not going to happen, it was not going to be possible. They were never going to spend more money after the last 3 transfer windows.
Let's go back to this, right? And this is part of the reason why Poch is no longer there and why I think he was wrong for the club. If you come out in January and you say, I want a number 9, and then Broja leaves, and you knew they weren't going to sign another 9.
Yeah.
I knew they weren't going to sign another 9. You knew the club presumably told you, Poch, no, we got Nico Jackson. We're going to find other solutions. We're not going to spend money on another center forward. Why would you come out and say it?
Because I think you defend your image. So there's a malaise. We know that we've known there's been malaise from the beginning. Pretty much, people have told us. You could hear those kind of allegations and. People talk a lot off the record.
The team
was not. The team was not doing well. We kept saying there's no improvement. Poch is not. This is not working, right? Okay. Towards the end, it worked a little bit better. There was the League Cup final. There was an FA Cup semi-final or quarter-final, whatever. Okay, semi-final. Okay, maybe. But overall, it was still not good enough. Even if they finished 6th, it was a tough season. But if you're Poch, in a way, you defend yourself. You're not happy there. You know this is not going to go anywhere, really. So you came out as much as you could with those punchlines almost. I want this. This is not my team, by the way, which is quite a strong thing to say from a manager of a top club like that, which is what he said a month ago. No, don't say this is my team. This is not my team. This is the club's team. As in like this, these are not my players. I didn't choose them. I don't want some of them. I want others that never came.
I don't have a problem with you being honest, but then be straight up and from day one. And I wish people did this. I'm assuming Lawrence, I know for a fact that Stuart and Paul Winstanley can actually speak and they have voices and voice boxes and brains because I've heard them both speak. I would say, listen, when they take the job, I say, listen, I'm on board with your project. These guys pick the players, which is generally kind of normal, right? We have these young players. We're going to grow. Let's do a press conference together. Let's have these guys come out and say, this is our job. We provide the ingredients and Poch makes the omelet. And that way it's very clear that if Robert Sanchez is terrible to the point that he feels he has to drop him for Georgia Petrovic, that's fine. Then, hey, they made a bad call with the goalkeeper, right? Yeah. And it's not on Poch. Yeah. Rather than this, this my guy, your guy.
True.
It always messes everything up.
It's okay. This looks bad on Poch as well, right? Even if it's mutual consent.
Of course it does.
After a year, it looks bad on him. So in his camp, they're trying to spin this around to say, like, look, he's still a great coach. Big clubs still want him. This was not really his fault if things didn't go well because the club went one direction. And there must have been some miscommunication at the start, right? When they hired him and when he said yes. Because
it's funny
somebody lies to someone else.
You mentioned the words miscommunication, right? So Poch has people who represent him, who advise him. Poch himself has been around the block. He's 52 years old. He's not a child.
Yeah.
Presumably he sat down, not just with Winstanley and Stewart, but also with Bowley and also with Iqbali and maybe even Jose Feliciano if he was around, right? And guys, if you do this, you have to speak clearly to each other.
Yeah.
There's no excuse for miscommunication. When there is miscommunication, I think there's passing the buck from both sides.
Yeah.
And I think, I've said, like, if I had to give Poch a letter grade this season, I would have given him an incomplete because of all the injuries he had, which is a freak amount.
Yeah, it's true.
But I would want him to produce straight away. If the issue, though, is vision, guys, you should have had this sorted beforehand.
Yeah.
You should have known what you went into. You, Boli and Igbali, should have read Poch better when he came in because he has a history. There's a history there at Paris Saint-Germain, at Spurs, even at Southampton, of Pochettino behaving like this. He's like, does well. He's like, and I'm the boss.
Yeah, I want control. But to be fair, he developed this first team with young players. So I can get the idea at the beginning, right? Of, listen, we've got this great young squad with talent, with a bit of experience as well. Okay, there's too many players. Some are maybe not ready yet. But could you make them into a proper team? A bit like what he did at Spurs, really, the first few years. Except that this time, I think the whole environment was very different. And at Spurs, they didn't spend any money for him, right? For 18 months, he didn't have any new signing
at the end,
point. So he'd been in an environment where he would ask for something and the answer was no. It's just that between...
And he should have been prepared. But I think a lot of these coaches...
He has changed as well from that time.
He has. And a lot of coaches have egos. A lot of coaches say, in the end, the owners, they're big softies. They want to win. They're competitive people. When I show them we're close and then I say, hey, we asked for another forward or whatever, then they break down and they do that. And I think, again, that's another misreading of the situation. I think that might have been true of Boli, in the first year when they were there, when they were making some impulsive things because Tuchel asked them, whatever. For better or worse, Chelsea have gone down this road. The worst thing that people talk about stability, Boli talked about stability. The worst thing you can do once you've committed these enormous resources to all these young players is to then change direction all of a sudden. You can't. You have to see this process out.
Yeah.
You have to try to make it work. Some of those players are very good. Some of those players are good, but they paid way too much for them.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about Caicedo and Enzo. Some of these players get injured. Maybe it's a medical thing. I mean, I'd like to see Romeo Lavia play professional football one day.
Yeah, and Wesley Fofana.
That guy, I think we can park for a while. But just given how unlucky he's been with injuries. But you can't deviate from that. The worst thing they could do now is think, Tuchel or Mourinho or whatever, right? So we agree on that part.
So get the right manager that will just adhere to the idea and to the philosophy.
Now, two things bubbling in the background. One, I don't want to go too far into boardroom things, but I think there's enough suggestions out there and evidence. I've spoken to people as well. Todd Bowley and the Clear Lake duo of Igbali and Feliciano do not see eye to eye, right? We've seen Bowley stepping back. I don't think it's a bad thing that Bowley steps back because, as you know, and I've really crucified him every time. Every time he talks, when he pretends he owns the Dodgers and whatever, blah, 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 rather than being a part owner, he says all these things which reflect poorly on him and reflect poorly on the club.
Yeah.
Igbali hasn't spoken as much. They seem to be at odds. I think ultimately there's much more financial might with Igbali and Feliciano. Mm-hmm. And so I think Bowley might either retain a minority. Well, the minority, he has a minority now, but he will sort of fade in the background, maybe sell part of his stake or all of his stake or whatever. Certainly he's not going to be visible, but I think there has to be somebody visible. Maybe it will be Igbali, who the fans can at least say there's a counterweight to whoever comes in and manages. Because I always say this, there has to be somebody else. You can't just put everything on a manager, especially if you end up with a Kieran McKenna or an Enzo Maresca. I think that's critical. The other big thing, Jules, is money, is the profit and sustainability rules. Can Chelsea balance the books? There's one deadline, June 30th. Yeah. We've said if they'll get money for Lewis Hall, they probably sell Ian Maatsen, I assume. So they may not get the money they want for Ian Maatsen.
No, but they will get some good money.
I think they'll be okay with that, maybe. But again, it's not going to be a summer where they spend a ton of money.
Unless they sell. Again, unless they sell more than just Maatsen and Hall, who are on loan to club that would probably trigger the buyout clause. So it's always the same. Kieran McKenna, whoever's coming in, might be happy with the squad as it is. But if he wants a number 9, be ready to sell a Conor Gallagher for 40 million or something like that,
Well,
a Travis Chalobah for 25, and then with the 65 that you get, you go and sign Vlahovic or whatever, or you find a way for getting rid of Lukaku and get somebody instead. But there will be no new signings unless there's a departure, like proper departures, I think.
I agree. That's going to be huge. And bear also in mind, and we remind everybody of this, when it comes to selling players, amortization comes into it.
Yeah.
So if I signed, I don't know, I don't remember how much they spent on Madueke, but you know, let's say I bought
35 million.
35 million sounds about right.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's probably that 6 or 7 year contract, but they have to spread it over 5 years anyway. So if you were to sell Madueke now,
Yeah.
you know, on his value, his unamortized value in your books, his residual value will be about 25 million. So even if you sell Madueke for 40 million, your profit is only 15 million off that. So you have to bear this in mind.
Yeah.
And with some of the older players, sell Sterling. Like, yeah, but Sterling has a huge contract.
Yeah.
And people don't want to, or Lukaku, people don't want to take that on. These are all things that I think are really important. And I think Chelsea's summer is going to be determined by the accountants as much as anything else.
Yeah, it's a massive summer for them.
All right, should we turn it back to United?
Oh.
I'll ask you an easy question. Would Pochettino be an upgrade over the incumbent manager?
You would be an upgrade on Eric Ten Hag anyway,
Thank
let
you.
alone Mauricio Pochettino. Is he the right guy though? So an upgrade on Ten Hag, I can give you many managers. but is Pochettino the right guy now in what Ineos and Ratcliffe and Dan Ashworth and Wilcox and all that Berrada and all that new team are going to do? I'm not so sure. For the reasons that we said, if Poch arrives, he will want to be the boss. He will want to be in charge and in control of pretty much everything. And right now, I'm not sure that's what they need. They need somebody who's going to work with the new structure in place, that are going to be open to their ideas as much as bringing his own idea of, but Poch is not that kind of guy. Poch is, this is my way and no other way. It's my ideas. This is who I want, who I don't want to. And I just don't think right now, Pochettino, especially after the season that he's just had, would be the right guy for this United project.
It's funny, when you describe Poch that way, I see that, but then I also wonder, like, okay, I understand Jose Mourinho being that way. I understand Antonio Conte being that way. I understand Jurgen Klopp being that way. But I'm sorry, you're Mauricio Pochettino. Like, you're in a different conversation at this stage.
I know, but he's a Champions League finalist. He's
Okay.
No, but it still
And
has
Terzic is a Champions League finalist too.
Oh, I know.
I mean, I just don't see that. I just don't see why I, as a football club, when I can choose a 99 million managers out there, unless I'm buying, in which case they all say no, why I would pick somebody who, when he has a little bit of success, is going to be like, I'm the boss now. Omar, Dan, see you guys. I want this guy.
Yeah.
That is what I struggle with a little bit. But I think he'd do well. I think if he's learned lessons from this, he comes back.
But I thought he'd learned a lesson from PSG, and he clearly hasn't. So,
Which is why he was wrong for Chelsea.